How's it going, everyone? Marriland here, and this is Marriland's Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon Pokémon Review series, which ties into my Ultra Moon walkthrough series. Although, don't worry, both the review and the walkthrough series apply for Pokémon Ultra Sun as well. This video goes over the various Pokémon and their evolutions that can be found in the listed area that also haven't been covered in a previous video. You can use the timestamps in the description to jump directly to the review that you want to hear. The reviews up ahead are for in-game purposes only and are not geared towards player versus player fights or post-game stuff. The stats you see listed are the Pokemon's base stats, not actual stats, and are the base of calculating stats at any level. Anyway, on with the reviews. The bug-type Grubbin is the first Pokemon you'll encounter after getting Pokeballs. It's actually fixed that way. It evolves into the bug-electric-type Charjabug at level 20, and then evolves into Vikavolt when it gains a level at Blush Mountain on the 3rd island. This is a change from Sun and Moon, where you actually had to wait until nearly the end of the game to evolve it, but it's still pretty late, even with that change. The good news about Grubbin is that it can actually do a fair amount of damage early on. It has reasonably high attack at that point in the game, and starts with Vice Grip. It picks up Bite at level 10, and Bug Bite at level 13, which is actually pretty good on it. It also gets Spark at level 16, which you'll want to keep for when it evolves and gains an electric type. Crunch is okay at level 25 as a Charjabug, but what's really important is that you don't level up Charjabug past level 30. This is because Vikavolt and Vikavolt alone gets Bug Buzz at level 31, and Bug Buzz is one of the best Bug-type moves in the game. If you evolve it past level 31, you'll have to wait until the end of the game and spend a heart scale to relearn it, though the move tutor move, Signal Beam, is a reasonable substitute. At that point, Air Slash is another move that can only be relearned that isn't too bad. Charjabug gets access to Light Screen, which can help increase its team's defensive ability, especially combined with the Eviolite you get towards the end of the 2nd island. Vikavolt gets access to Energy Ball and Flash Cannon as well, both of which are pretty solid moves. Charge Beam is another interesting possibility on Vikavolt, as is Hyper Beam due to its very high special attack. There's also the fact that even all the way up to Vikavolt, you've got a big bug that has massive special attack, but sadly abysmal speed. Vikavolt is very slow, so it's going to have to take a hit pretty much every time it attacks. Something like the Quick Claw could help give it extra turns, but it's so unreliable. The good news is that its defenses aren't terrible, and it has just 2 weaknesses, but I personally don't feel the insane special attack is worth the pitiful speed. Since neither Grubbin nor Charjabug are overly great until they evolve into Vikavolt, and since you can get a Charjabug right at the place that it evolves, there's really little reason to take a Grubbin with you this early in the game. There are also other decent options too. Cutiefly's evolution, Ribombee, is a much better bug type than Charjabug. Well, at least much faster. Oricorio, Mareep, and Pikachu are all good early options. And Ampharos, Raichu, and Jolteon all give Vikavolt a run for its money, all of which are faster. Most way faster. And Magnezone is another very strong Pokemon that evolves at the exact same area. Whether Vikavolt is the ultimate electric option for you is really your call to make, although once it's evolved, it's certainly in the running with the other options. At first glance, you may think of Caterpie as useless. It's a bug, it's pretty flimsy, and even its final evolution isn't anything special. It evolves quickly, evolving to Metapod at level 7, and then Butterfree at level 10, so that's a plus. But then it's going to be stuck with that strength for the rest of the game. Well, I've got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that Butterfree really is not all that great about halfway through the game and beyond. The good news, though, is that Butterfree is actually really good for almost all of the first 2 islands. Stat-wise, ignore Caterpie and Metapod. You'll have a Butterfree by your first trial if you do even a modest amount of training. At that stage in the game, Butterfree has amazing special attack on par with Poplio's evolution. Plus, it gets Gust upon evolving, too, so it can make use of that right away. Its special defense is also decent. Speed is more than zippy early on in the game, though it's a bit lackluster later on, and, well, the rest of its stats are pretty bad. These stats aren't great later on, but at the point you get Butterfree, they're awesome and help it serve its purpose very well. It has the powerful Compound Eyes ability as a Butterfree, which boosts the accuracy of its moves by 30% of the base accuracy, meaning 70% accurate moves become 91%, and 75% accurate moves become 97.5%. Keep that in mind for later, but one helpful trick for training up Caterpie is don't evolve it until level 9. It gets Bug Bite at level 9 as a Caterpie, which is a 60 power bug type move. It's not great, but hey, it's better than Tackle, and you get Stab. Evolve Caterpie at exactly level 9 into Metapod, and then you'll be just one level up away from evolving into Butterfree, except you'll have Bug Bite. Although Butterfree's attack is approximately half its special attack, Bug Bite is nice for any Dark-type Pokemon you run into early on. You can also easily get rid of Tackle with both Bug Bite and Gust in Butterfree's repertoire. On top of that, Butterfree gets Confusion right around the corner at level 11, and then, best of all, it gets 3 special powder moves at level 13. Poison Powder, Stun Spore, and Sleep Powder. Sleep Powder is absolutely amazing with Butterfree. By default, it has 75% accuracy, but Butterfree's Compound Eyes ability boosts it up to an astonishing 97.5%. Plus, Butterfree's speed should result in it outspeeding most Pokemon early on in the game. If you can reach level 13 by the time you take on the first Totem fight, it should be a breeze. All you need to do is just use Sleep Powder until everything's asleep, and then just go crazy with either Gust or Bug Bite, depending on which Totem you're fighting. Butterfree is also an absolutely stellar matchup against the first Island's Kahuna, Hala, when it comes time to fighting him. Put everything to sleep and then just Gust away. It's highly resistant to every threatening move Hala has. It completely trivializes the fight. That same Sleep Powder tactic can be used against so many other fights throughout the first and second island to make them easy. One thing you need to keep in mind is that Sleep Powder, along with other powder moves, do not work on grass types. Other than that though, Sleep Powder in particular is amazing. The other two aren't really worth learning in comparison. But wait, there's more! At level 17, it gets Psybeam, which is a direct upgrade to Confusion, and then at level 19, it gets Silverwind, although by that point, you should teach the strong Signal Beam to Butterfree from the move tutor. Signal Beam on Butterfree is incredible at the point you get it at, and you should definitely replace Bug Bite, which you'll never have a need for again. You'll just have to do a little bit of Mantine Surfing to get the BP you need for it, but it's worth it. Although, save up a bit more BP and treat Butterfree to Giga Drain, a super useful Grass-type move that has 75 power and even heals up Butterfree for half the damage you did with it. That, combined with Sleep Powder, lets Butterfree fight against rock types with ease. At that point, your moveset should really be Sleep Powder, Signal Beam, Giga Drain, and Psybeam. Gust is no longer necessary after getting Psybeam, although you could stick with Gust over Psybeam if you really wanted. Butterfree actually continues to get some great moves as it levels up, getting Bug Buzz at level 31, which is far superior to Signal Beam, and the second best move Butterfree gets, the first being Sleep Powder. Plus it gets Tailwind at level 41 to raise your party's speed for a few turns, Air Slash at level 43 for an excellent stab flying type move, and then Quiver Dance at level 47 to raise Butterfree's special attack, special defense, and speed by 1 stage. If you still have Butterfree at that point, that's a phenomenal move to use in conjunction with Sleep Powder. Butterfree also has access to Electro Web, oddly enough, at an early move tutor, but realistically your moveset will be a little bit too cramped for that to be useful. It also gets Psychic, Shadow Ball, and Energy Ball from TM, and with a super reliable sleep move and decent speed, Dream Eater is actually a potential option, although I think sticking with Psychic and Giga Drain is more reliable in the long run. Lastly, it can also set up Sunny Day or Rain Dance if you need that kind of support for your team, perhaps doing that after you've put the foe to sleep before switching out. I know I've made Butterfree sound great, and for the first half of the game, it really is. But as the game goes on, more and more things will outspeed Butterfree, and its stats will definitely pale in comparison to a lot of the other Pokemon you'll be fighting. It's not a bad idea to retire Butterfree after the second island, but know that it gets plenty of good moves even after that point, so if you can put aside its weaker stats, you can still rock Butterfree and its Sleep Powder Train for the rest of the game if you'd like. Yungoos and Gumshoos, two normal-type Pokemon that only appear and evolve in the daytime, are, well, rather underwhelming to say the least. Yungoos evolves into Gumshoos at level 20 while it's daytime out, so you'll have to wait if it's nighttime in your game. For their standard abilities, they have either Strong Jaw, which raises the power of their biting moves by 50%, or Stakeout, which does more damage to Pokemon if they just switched out on that turn. Stakeout is almost useless for in-game purposes, so you'll want Strong Jaw for sure. Yungoos' stats are really darn bad. The only stat that's good is its attack. Gumshoos doesn't get much better, with pretty good attack, okay hit points, and lousy everything else, especially speed. It doesn't really get any worthwhile moves early on. Bite at level 19 is probably the only thing you'll see before you get bored. Sure, it gets Hyper Fang, which gets a boost from Strong Jaw, but it's all the way at level 43 as a Gumshoos. It can learn the elemental punches from move tutors, as well as a few other goodies, but it's so slow and has miserable defenses that it isn't really worth teaching them. I'm sorry, but neither Yungoos nor Gumshoos are very good, in my opinion at least. Buneary, another normal type, is substantially better than Yungoos, and you get it on the same route. Not to mention that Lopunny is a much better evolved normal type. There's also the Pikipek line, as well as Furfrou right around the corner in Hau'oli City, not to mention any of the other normal types later on. These two just aren't that good. The first of the Alolan variants you'll run across, Alolan Rattata, is a dark normal type that appears only at night. It evolves into Alolan Raticate at level 20 at nighttime. Unfortunately, that dark normal type is more of a hindrance than anything, as it gives them a major weakness to fighting. As far as their stats go, they're not really much better. Rattata is fast and has a little bite to it, but it's as flimsy as can be. Raticate definitely fixes its defensive stats, but none of its stats are really anything remarkable. Their abilities aren't great either. Gluttony allows it to consume certain berries at 50% health rather than 25% health, while Hustle raises its attack by 50%, but lowers its accuracy for physical moves by 20%. That means you'll hit harder with Rattata and Raticate, but you'll miss 1 out of every 5 moves, and that adds up pretty quickly. Keep in mind that Hustle only affects the accuracy of physical moves, but these rats have such poor special attack that it won't really matter. Another big problem with Rattata and Raticate is that they don't really get anything worthwhile. Bite at level 10 is great with Hustle, and a Hyper Fang at level 16 is also very nice. But other than Crunch at level 24 as Raticate, that's about it for good moves from leveling up. And their TM and Move Tutor moves aren't much better either. They learn a few special moves, but lack the special attack to use them. There are plenty of dark types in Alola, as well as plenty of normal types. You do much better choosing any of them over Rattata. In the next few areas, you'll have options like Inkay, Meowth, and even Zorua, all of which are far superior. Two of my all-time favorite Pokemon, Buneary and Lopunny, are both based on rabbits. And while they may be plain normal types, thanks to the move tutors introduced in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, as well as Z-moves in Generation 7, there's actually a few fun strategies these two can do. First, though, you'll have to keep in mind that Buneary evolves into Lopunny by happiness. Technically speaking, when gaining a level while its happiness is high enough, or at 220 invisible happiness points. You'll also need to keep in mind that Buneary has substantially lower base happiness than most other Pokemon. It's one of the hardest Pokemon to evolve by happiness in the game. Pokemon gain happiness by leveling up in battle, by having vitamins fed to them, by having certain berries fed to them, and by walking around with you in your party. One surefire way to evolve Buneary into Lopunny is to just run around for half an hour or so and then gain a level. However, you're probably best to wait until after taking down the first Kahuna, since you'll have access to riding around on a Tauros to speed things up, as well as the Soothe Bell item that you can hold to raise its happiness faster. But if you're determined, you could have a Lopunny at as low of a level as level 3 on Melee Island. For the sake of this review, I'll assume you'll be getting Lopunny at the start of the second island. Buneary has two standard abilities, Klutz and Runaway. Klutz is terrible, preventing any effects from its held items. Thankfully though, this excludes things like Z Crystals, the Soothe Bell, Lucky Eggs, and the Amulet Coin. Runaway allows it to always run away from any wild battle, but unlike Klutz, Runaway turns into Cute Charm upon evolution, which has a chance of infatuating foes that hit with a direct contact attack and are of the opposite gender. It's not great, but way better than not being able to use items. Stat-wise, Buneary is reasonable for an early game Pokemon, but Lopunny is actually very fast and has surprisingly good defensive stats. Its attack isn't great, but it's not terrible either. Here's a very fun gimmick with Buneary and Lopunny. You may notice a certain move that Buneary has that you think is worthless. Splash? Why the heck would you want Splash? Well, let me tell you, hold on to that Splash. After clearing the first trial, you get the Normalium Z Crystal, which allows you to use Z moves for your normal type moves. It just so happens that when you use that, it will allow you to use Z Splash instead of Splash, and Z Splash raises Buneary or Lopunny's attack by a massive 3 stages. That's effectively a 150% boost. The downside is that it takes a turn to set up, but the upside is it should allow Buneary or Lopunny to do a lot of damage. Another downside is that your team can't use any more Z moves for the rest of the battle, as you can only use 1 per battle, but it's still nice for some of those longer fights, and Lopunny should have the defenses to take a hit afterwards. Unfortunately, Buneary doesn't learn any worthwhile moves leveling up until Jump Kick at level 23, which it learns at the same level as a Lopunny as well. You'll be stuck with Pound early on. However, immediately upon evolving, it will learn Return, and since its happiness is already pretty high at that point, it'll do a lot of damage, maxing out at 102 power at maximum happiness. Lopunny gets Stab on return, plus has Z Splash to back it up. It should be fairly easy to sweep whole teams with a Z Splash plus return combo if you want even crazier amounts of destruction. At the cost of versatility, you can use Z Splash with Last Resort, taught from one of the earlier move tutors, which does 140 power if you've used all of your other moves. It doesn't have much PP, and you'd have to use the move deleter to ensure you don't have any other moves, but it is a pretty fun gimmick. You'll miss out on Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, and Fire Punch from move tutors though, which are all great coverage moves alongside Return and Jump Kick. Sadly, it doesn't get Drain Punch until the post-game move tutor, otherwise that'd be great on it. Iron Tail and Low Kick are two other interesting options. Overall, Buneary and Lopunny have a fun gimmick of Z-Splash, plus it can be used early on. They may not be the best use of it, and there are plenty of other normal-type Pokemon to choose, but even without Z-Splash, there's enough that Lopunny can do for coverage to keep it interesting. If you're expecting anything great from Ledyba, you'll be sorely disappointed. Unfortunately, Ledyba and its evolution, Ledian, are both really bad. Ledyba evolves at level 18, which is 8 levels later than, say, you get Butterfree at, and Ledian has really nothing good to back it up, unlike Butterfree. The only saving grace of Ledyba is that it gets Light Screen and Reflect at level 12, which is really early on, and can help support your team that way. But that's pretty much it. Even as Ledian, its offensive capabilities are almost non-existent. Its attacking stats are so low that you pretty much have to depend on status moves, and even then, Ledian doesn't get that many that help out. At least Ledian has high special defense and can tank hits with Light Screen up, but you'll be stuck trying to find something to do in that time. If you're looking for a bug flying type, Ledian is the worst out there. Butterfree and Masquerain completely outclass it. It's just not worth it unless you're feeling particularly bold. Spinarak is the nighttime counterpart to Ledyba, and thankfully it's marginally faster, but not by much. Spinarak evolves into Ariados at level 22, which is way later than necessary and means you're going to be forced to sit through the underwhelming form of Spinarak for nearly 20 levels. both are bug poison types, although it'll be a while before it'll feel like it. Spinarak's moves start off so bad. Poison Sting, Constrict, Absorb, Infestation. Oh yes, wonderful moves with 20 power or less. Great. It's not until Shadow Sneak at level 19 that you get something with 40 power, and even that isn't Stab or even that helpful. A lot of its moves are more gimmicky, including its extreme late game signature move, Toxic Thread, which just poisons the foe and lowers its speed. I mean, yeah, that's cool and all, but it's not worth keeping an Ariados on your team until level 63 to learn it. It gets Bug Bite as a move tutor move after the first island, plus later on it makes reasonable use of Leech Life. Ariados' stats are fairly lackluster, but at the same time they're closer to average rather than bad, except for its speed. Its attack is at least high enough to do some damage with Leech Life and other physical moves, but it's really not a good example of a poison or a bug-type Pokemon. In the end, it's not really a good idea to invest much into Spinarak early on. If you're dead set on using one, they are available later in the game, where they'll have to be babied a lot less, so you're better off waiting until then. But even then, it's pretty hard to recommend. Pikipek may be no Starly, but it's actually not too bad, and it evolves fairly quickly compared to a lot of other birds. This normal flying type evolves into Trumbeak at level 14, which is quite early, and then into Toucannon at level 28. It actually has great attack, even as a Pikipek, and that just gets better as it evolves, with Toucannon having quite high attack. Pikipek and Trumbeak are also pretty fast, but unfortunately Toucannon is rather slow. Thankfully, the rest of Toucannon's stats are alright. For standard abilities, it has either Keen Eye or Skill Link. Keen Eye is simple and straightforward. It prevents its own accuracy from being lowered, and also ignores any evasion modifiers on the target. Skill Link, on the other hand, is more limited in use, but it's also pretty helpful. Skill Link ensures that any moves that hit 2 to 5 times always hit 5 times. Although Pikipek and its evolutions don't have a lot of moves that benefit from this, it does prove helpful. Skill Link is usually the better of the two, but it's perfectly fine if you end up with Keen Eye instead. For early moves, it's got Peck and Rock Smash, although thankfully it gets the extremely helpful Brick Break from TM early on, which should replace Rock Smash. Brick Break gives it a huge advantage against the first totem, especially in Ultra Moon. After evolving to Trumbeak, it gets Pluck at level 16, which is a solid flying type move, and then Roost at level 21, which can help with healing, although using healing items is usually preferred over using a move slot. As soon as Trumbeak evolves, it learns its signature move, Beak Blast, which makes it act last, but if the foe hits it with a direct contact move on that turn, then the foe gets burned. Either way, it has 100 power, which isn't too bad, and Toucannon isn't overly fast in the first place. It gets Drill Peck at level 34, which is more vanilla than Beak Blast and may suit your battle style better. Bullet Seed at level 40 is really nice if you have Skill Link, as then it's a 125 power grass type move, but you may be better suited going for the Toucannon only move tutor move of Seed Bomb instead if your Toucannon has Keen Eye. As for other TM or move tutor moves, there are a few interesting options like Flame Charge for extra speed, Thief, U-Turn, Fly, and Steel Wing, so it's up to you to swap them around as you see fit. Overall, Pikipek isn't too bad. It's not the greatest, but it's certainly not the worst. However, committing to a flying type this early means you're missing out on other potentially cool options like Hawlucha, Crobat, Oricorio, Talonflame, and Archaeops, among others. Hawlucha is an extremely good Pokemon that you can get on Melee Island, so you'll have to choose between Hawlucha and Pikipek, or have 2 flying types on your team. The mascot of the Pokemon series. Well, at least it's baby form. The Electric-type Pichu is available right from the start. It evolves into Pichu when its happiness is high enough and it gains a level. And you gain happiness by walking around, by gaining levels, by using vitamins, and so on. After Pichu evolves into Pikachu, it can then evolve once again by using a Thunderstone on it, although not into the Raichu you may be familiar with. Alolan Raichu is an electric psychic type, and despite floating around on its tail, it's still very weak to ground-type moves. There are a few reasons you may want to hold off on evolving Pikachu, thanks to some exclusive items, but generally speaking, you'll be best with Raichu. Pichu's stats are absolutely miserable. Pikachu's aren't much better either, and it'll take a while to evolve Pichu into Pikachu. More on that in a moment. But as for Raichu, Raichu has really high speed and pretty high special attack as well, but it's also got workable attack. Raichu's Surge Surfer ability is, unfortunately, unlikely to be useful at all in-game, as you'd need to have a separate electric type use the move Electric Terrain, since Raichu cannot learn it. Thankfully, Raichu's speed is more than sufficient without its ability. When it comes to moves, it gets a bit tricky. Thankfully, due to Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon's move tutors, you have a bit more wiggle room. But paying attention as to when to evolve Pichu into Pikachu, and then Pikachu into Raichu is very important because you may miss out on certain moves. Pichu starts with Charm, which is actually rather helpful against certain bosses to lower their damage output. It also gets Nasty Plot at level 13, which raises its special attack by 2 stages, and is pretty useful, especially later on. However, Pikachu learns the only other electric-type move you'll learn for a while, Electro Ball, at level 13 as well, meaning the ideal time to evolve Pichu is at level 13. That can be rather difficult to plan, but if you hold off on training Pichu until after you've gotten Tauros Charge and the Soothe Bell, you'll be able to run around for 15 to 20 minutes to raise its happiness, and then should be able to evolve it. It's not a huge deal if you miss out on Electro Ball though, because you can teach either Shockwave or Electro Web from the first 2 move tutors accessible after clearing the first island. Signal Beam is also a great move to learn at that point, and Brick Break can be taught as a Pikachu. Unfortunately, Pikachu won't be overly useful on the second island. And you don't get the Thunderstone until towards the end of the second island, so keep that in mind. Once you get the Thunderstone, you may want to hold off on using it until after clearing the second island's Grand Trial, because you can teach Pikachu, not Raichu, the powerful Volt Tackle. It's not necessary and has recoil damage, but it is pretty strong. As soon as Pikachu evolves into Raichu, it will learn Psychic, which is very powerful on Raichu, and definitely a move you'll want to keep. Unfortunately, that's it for moves Raichu will learn from Level Up. You'll have to use TMs and move tutors to learn anything else. Volt Switch and Thunder Punch are decent moves, and Calm Mind can be an interesting replacement for Nasty Plot, or just a good stat boosting move if you didn't get Nasty Plot. Lastly, once you get the TM for Thunderbolt, that's a must-have for Raichu. Overall, Raichu is a pretty good Pokemon. Having both electric and psychic coverage is pretty good, and thankfully you can now pick up Shockwave in case you missed out on Electro Ball, which wasn't possible in the original Sun and Moon. The downside is having to go through most of the second island with Pikachu. It's a pain having to baby it through the island, but Raichu makes a pretty good addition to the team. Other options instead of Raichu are Jolteon, Ampharos, and Electivire on the electric side, and Alakazam, Espeon, Starmie, and Metagross on the psychic side. Any of those Pokemon are great as well, and most don't require as much babying, so they may be worth considering instead. Alright, that's it for this Pokemon review episode. If you enjoyed it, perhaps consider hitting that like button, or subscribing to the Marriland channel for more. And if you have any other cool strategies, ideas, recommended moves, or overall opinion on any of the Pokemon here, even if you just like it for being adorable or something, feel free to leave a comment down below to get the discussion going. You can find more Pokemon reviews, as well as my Pokemon Ultra Moon walkthrough series, in the links below in the description, or on this end screen. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.